Hello everybody, welcome to my live stream here again on YouTube, and I'm very happy to see you again after last week. Every week now it's our 10th broadcast here live on YouTube, and I hope I'm starting to get the hang of it. In any case, I also hope that you like the content, that you like these live streams. It's really important to me, so if this is the case, don't hesitate to like the content, like the videos, and of course subscribe to my channel. Tonight we are obviously going to speak about the candidates tournament in Berlin, which is in full swing. 10 rounds have been played, and we can say that actually we stand before the final sprint. Today was round 10 after all players had a free day yesterday, so they had the chance to gather energy, gather strength maybe. For some of these players, actually, I believe the tournament is more or less gone, in the sense that they cannot or hardly can fight for the first place anymore. We'll actually take a look perhaps at today's results, if you allow me to open this window here, which I was checking the games earlier of today on Playchess, and today there have been 3 draws and 1 decisive result. And actually I waited a little bit before starting this this broadcast, because there was this Magnus Carlsen here still on some minutes ago, maybe 15 minutes ago, and this was the big clash of today, because Caruana leading the standings +3, Mamedyarov +2, but today with white, Mamedyarov would certainly try something to take the lead, perhaps beat Caruana, because I remind you that only the first place counts in this event. Finishing second is a very nice thing, but it's worth nothing. You have to win in order to qualify for the World Championship final, which is going to take place in November this year. And the winner of this tournament will face world champion Magnus Carlsen. Vladimir Kramnik is far from being able to qualify. So, well, I hope you are going to enjoy. Let me just actually come back to me, and well, of course, this is a live stream as usual, so don't hesitate to put your comments here in the chat at the right of your screen, or at the right of the camera. So yeah, I'll be taking a look. I have a second comp here. I'll be taking a look at what you have to say, and yeah, I'm quite interested to listen or read your opinion about this tournament, about certain players we are going to talk about. We're not going to talk about all players, because well, or perhaps waste a few seconds on all players, but we're going to focus, of course, on some very interesting figures in this tournament. In the lead, as I said, after today's draw, Caruana, he has 6.5 points out of 10. He's alone there, ahead of Mamedyarov, who has 6 points, and Grishuk, who has 5.5 points. I believe these 3 players are going to fight for first place. I don't think that any player with 50%, like Karyakin, for instance, will be able to fight. Ding Liren also has 50%. He has made all draws so far in the tournament. I don't really imagine him, neither him nor Karyakin, win 3 games out of 4 in the last games. It's hard to imagine. So I believe, you know, Grishuk has chances, small chances, and of course Mamedyarov and Caruana. The question is, of course, who of these 3 players will have the better nerves. Of course, Caruana has more points, but in the previous candidates he was also in very good shape, had very good chances, but in the end he kind of cracked in some games where he could have actually won, and well, could have happened better for him 2 years ago. Now he is in the lead, and I hope for him he's gonna make it. So hi Mark Cram, hi Noah, Nice to see you back here in this live stream. So as I said, let's actually switch back to today's games, which I decided to take from Play Chess here. And we had this this encounter between Mamedyarov and Caruana. I'm not going to analyze them too deeply, but Mamedyarov played a Catalan. Well, there have been quite a few Catalans in this tournament so far, so Mamedyarov following actually the trend, if we can say so. Well, I have to be a bit critical about Mamedyarov in this tournament. We're used to a Mamedyarov who is on fire, showing spectacular chess, great ideas in the openings. But so far, and he's actually keeping on the same rhythm he was in Vaikenzi 2 months ago. He plays very, very safely. He actually plays so safe that it's almost, well, I'm going to be a bit harsh maybe, sometimes his games are a bit boring, except the one or the other game, but I think he just waits for his chances, and he got one in the very first round when he beat Karyakin. Well, he deserved the win, but he also actually got, let's say, some mistakes by his opponents, his opponent Karyakin. So he managed to win that first round thanks to many mistakes by Karyakin. And later on in the tournament, many draws, and later on he beat Kramnik, who could have repeated moves and made a draw, but Kramnik, we'll speak about him a bit later in this broadcast, but clearly, well, you know, he overpressed against Mamedyarov, and that yielded Mamedyarov a second point. But in these two games, Mamedyarov played against Caruana, also in the first half of the tournament. It was quite wild, and here also against, in this game, well, you know, here knight c6, usually white doesn't castle here. Usually he goes queen a4 in this position. So I can't really show the moves here because we're on Play Chess, so I'm just showing just saying a few things. The game is castling, which is quite, you know, dangerous. Rook b8, e3, bishop e7, and we get a position which is which can be found in a very, very similar variation. So actually, you can draw parallels between the two. But it's quite a wild position, but I think white has actually slightly better chances, and actually his main hope is that black is not prepared, because it's complicated. But Caruana showed perhaps good preparation, or perhaps at least good understanding of this position, and he went for this position after mass exchanges where the moment white is 2 pawns up, but well, you can see here double pawns on the e file, an h pawn which is probably going to fall at some point. Well, black also has double pawns here, but he's the one playing for a draw, so it, you know, it's perhaps slightly less important. And queen e6, so going straight for all weaknesses. Well, I see many people are gathering. Hello, Omkar. Chess Improvement as well, he's here. It's great to see you again. So I'm gonna come back to your comments a bit later. So here, yeah, rook b5, so he's gonna take a pawn, and in this position it's actually very close to equality, and well, Mamedyarov, you know, suddenly has some problems. You know, he went for rook f5 in order to protect h5, his only extra pawn, and after rook d6, well, rook d1 is coming. It's not so easy to face that. So king g2, rook d1, b3, but you know, you can't really play bishop b2. It's not that easy, so he played g6 here. Quite interesting way to do it. So rook e5, yeah, c5, and they went for a complicated line, and here it's already quite clear what's going to happen. I mean, Mamedyarov cannot play bishop b2, so he goes for maximum, and here he has to sack the exchange. But he's getting 2 pawns for that. You can see that check and takes on c5. Well, usually if the pawn on e4 is not too dangerous, then the game should end in a draw. If the pawn were already on e7, or that would be another story, but it's not possible to push it that far. So I think that in this position the position is in dynamic balance, and the draw was a logical outcome here. Mamedyarov tried on move 40 to play a little longer, but well, nothing to be done actually. And well, quite an interesting finish actually, but nothing really that white could do here. Well, in the end, a draw, of course, after all pieces were exchanged. So, well, we've been very fast. We've been, browsing through this game extremely fast, much faster than it actually deserved. But actually, a very tense game between the two leaders. Quite a good one, I think. So I'm gonna check your comments because, of course. So Noah Kramnik won the mini match against Aronian. That's true. Yeah, we are going to speak about these two players because I think they are both really tragic figures so far in the tournament. And Omkar, I guess players with solid chess style do well in candidates. Anand Karyakin. Well, Karyakin 2 years ago, yeah, he was well, the great difference of the Karyakin 2 years ago is that he wouldn't lose a game, while here he already lost 2. Well, he bounced back by losing 2. Anand, well, I would actually consider Anand to be rather solid. It's true. Noah, you were wondering, but actually, of course, with white, well, let's call him. He's an active positional player, but this also means that he's solid. With black especially, he's extremely solid. With white, of course, he tries to do something, of course, more than others perhaps. But in general, he likes to keep everything under control. So we can, in a way, we can call him solid. Perhaps not the same kind of solidity as Karyakin. It's a different style, but yeah, in general, he's quite solid, I think. Omkar, you were asking if what I think about Caruana, whether he mixed up things in the preparation today. Well, I have really no idea. Because first of all, this castle, the move castle by Mamedyarov is quite unusual. Of course, Caruana knows something about it, but I think he was more or less on his own quite early on. But there was a very similar line I talked about. So he could orientate according to this this other line. So well, difficult to say, but in general. Perhaps he ended up slightly worse, but I don't think it was really anything special. Well, today we had Grishuk Karyakin, but this game ended in a draw without, further ado. I won't really look at this game because they actually exchanged many pieces, and I actually wonder if, well, if they really tried to go for the most available in the position, or if Grishuk tried to spare some energy perhaps for the last 4 games. This is also possible, but well, here he basically reached nothing. And the game between Dingliren and So was also very solid. A queen's gambit with bishop f4 and b6, a solid line, but okay. White took a pawn on c7 and accepted king f1, so some concessions, of course, but well, in general, I'd say black has enough compensation, but if white is careful, oops, I've gone a bit far. If white is careful, basically nothing should happen too dangerous. And of course, they swapped everything, and it seems both were happy for a draw. Well, Wesley So doing very badly in this tournament, even though he's won a single really good game against Aronian some days ago, and well, he's 7th in this tournament so far with 4 points out of 10, so -2. He's lost 3 games. I expected him much higher in the standings, but it turns out that his preparation was perhaps inferior or not at all sufficient for such an event. Well, I'm not even sure he has a second on the spot in Berlin. So, well, not too impressive, unfortunately. Well, and finally, Kramnik-Aronian today, the only decisive game of the round. It was an Italian game. Well, you remember Kramnik after beating Aronian in the first round, I mean in the first half, it was round 3, he would lead the event. He had 2.5 out of 3, and everybody saw him as a, well, almost favorite already in the tournament. Well, the turning point came in round 4 when well, he risked extremely much against Caruana with white. After a quiet opening, he sacrificed a piece for no real reason, and he should have been worse. Well, he was worse, and then Caruana mixed up things, and turns out Kramnik was winning, and he missed several wins, and in the second time control, he even lost that game against Caruana. This was probably a psychologically, at least, a turning point. Of course, you lose a whole point, or at least half a point, if we can say so. It's important, but I think it kind of destroyed him mentally, because Kramnik is clearly the one who had shown, you know, interesting chess so far. Even in the first 3 and then 4th round, he showed extremely interesting chess, aggressive chess. We could feel he was there to win. And after that, he kept on playing in the same style, but would overpress in many games. I'm thinking of the game against Mamedyarov, which I mentioned earlier, where Kramnik had a more or less equal position, but of course he could play on. He decided to play on. He could have repeated moves and made a draw immediately, but he decided to play on and go for a win, which was very risky. But the way he did it was extremely, you know, almost suicidal. And his attitude, his attitude in the press conference afterwards was well, many people said he was rude. I don't think he was really rude, but he just wanted to make a point that he felt he was better everywhere, and somehow you could feel it transpired that he lost completely his objectivity. And this actually went on in the next games. Well, he made a few draws, of course, but he kept on losing other games. He lost against Karyakin. We're gonna take a short look at this afterwards. And so basically, until today, he was like in a sheer drop, without any rescue possibility. Basically, you know, when you lose a game in such a tournament, such an important tournament, what you have to do normally is try to stabilize your inner state. Let's say the Soviet, according to the Soviet school, the Soviet way to do that is to secure a draw in the next round, even if you have the white pieces, so that you restore some kind of mental balance. But instead of that, Kramnik went for a win in every game, and the main, okay, that's in itself is not perhaps the biggest problem, but you can see the consequence immediately. He doesn't only go for a win, but he also overestimates his chances in most of the games. And in a way, he's a tragic figure, but he's well, he's responsible for his fate, and he's the only responsible person for the fact that he is now down to -1, and that's thanks to his win today. So, well, Mark Kram, I wouldn't call him arrogant normally, but there he was, yeah, he was actually in a way. Hello, Nicholas. In a way, he was arrogant for the fact that he would actually monopolize the microphone at the press conference and everything would turn about what he has seen, what he has played, what he missed, and of course you have an opponent as well. I mean, Mamedyarov in that game, well, he exploited your mistakes, Mr. Kramnik. He was there to collect the point in the end, and he did it really well. Well, Kramnik, to answer Omkar's last comment, well, actually, he in the past few years he's become much more aggressive. You can see that also from his opening choices. His tendency to try and fight from very early on in the game, not to play long theoretical lines, but to start the fight as soon as possible, as early as possible, in terms of number of moves. Like the first round against Grishuk, for instance, where he plays b3 on move 3. You know, he wants to get a fight from very early on, and this is actually a sign that he's in aggressive mood. So he's kept on, you know, on the same rhythm throughout the tournament, despite suffering heavy and painful losses. And normally this is not the way you do it. You should stabilize first. The tournament is long. You have 14 games. You can take one game off, even if you're white. It's more important to restore your inner balance in a way. Of course, this loss against Fabiano Caruana affected him greatly. Imagine if he had won it, he would have been at 3.5 out of 4. And my, you know, presumption is that Kramnik was really trying to go wild for a win in the first half of the tournament, because he, in my opinion, he understood that he basically doesn't really have the stamina and the, you know, the required energy amount to go throughout the tournament on the same style. So basically he would have to score +3 in the first half, and then in my opinion, if he had +3 after the first half, he would have calmed down and played much more securely. This is my theory, but we won't know, of course, because now he's on -1 and he has no chance, of course, to finish first anymore. Well, theoretical chance, of course, but we can't really. Okay, let's browse through this game very quickly. He is going for the 4 knights with bishop c4, c5. This is an opening which has been you know, played hundreds of years ago, and which is obviously not very popular, because white doesn't really get anything from the opening. But as we've just said, Kramnik doesn't really care. He wants to try to play for a win later on. So okay, he played like this and castle, and I think knight b8. Okay, that's already a sign that perhaps Oronian is in a slightly more aggressive mood, or he could have played maybe bishop e6, and then after take on e6 we would have a symmetrical pawn structure and a draw, certainly. Of course white could take also on c6, but not sure it would yield him very much. In any case, Oronian played knight b8 and b4. Well, here b4, that makes a good impression, because of course the idea of knight b8 is to play c6, and by playing b4 you secure your bishop on b3 and make sure you have taken some space on the queen side. It's not sure that white wants to play there, but if he plays b4, it certainly increases a bit his space there. So here normal moves, playing rook a b1 in order to free perhaps the rook f1 if he wants to double rooks on the f file. Well, you know, it's the first. I'm looking at this game for the first time. I've only seen the end, so I discover it together with you perhaps. And in this position, my impression is that white is very slightly better. His pieces are slightly more active. He has the f file. Of course, you have double pawn on the e file here, but they don't really affect, I think, white's position. Rook f2, queen b6, rook e1, rook f8. Okay, well, be careful, this pawn on f7 could be weak. Anyway, knight h4 makes sense. c5. Well, now you can play rook f1, c b4, okay, and Kramnik goes for all in again. Yeah? It's but he goes for an attack now. Look at all his pieces are directed here against the black king. The bishop, of course, the knight is nicely placed. An exchange sacrifice on f6, of course, is in the air. It's gonna open, of course, the diagonal for the queen to g3. So d5 makes sense, but well, I'm wondering why he didn't take on f6, but he must have had a reason not to do it. In any case, he took here first on b4. Okay, this is must be good too. D takes e4, pawn takes a5, and black doesn't want to propose the exchange of queens. This is a slightly strange to me at first sight, but okay. I haven't delved at all into the game, so I won't say anything. Knight g6. Okay, it's already a while. You see, let's just switch back. I come back to the position after move 6. Yeah, look at this position. Seems to be, very equal. People, ready to equalize by exchanging pieces. And here we have this position. Look at what Kramnik has done with this quiet opening. Of course, Aronian was an actor too in this game, but it's very, very impressive what he's done. So bishop e6 takes on e5, takes on d3. Of course, hard to understand everything, but I guess that after bishop takes b3 here, he might have taken on f6 with the rook, and then knight d7. Okay, it's all complicated, but it's the likely follow-up. And here we have it. Rook takes f6, rook takes f6 again, d2, trying to deflect the queen from the king side, but she goes there to g3 check. Okay, it's a wild game. It's you can say what you want about Kramnik, but hats off. I mean, the way he plays, it's really great, I believe. And here, okay, if he plays knight d7 with the idea bishop takes, rook takes f7 mate, then there is king e7, and the d pawn is queening. So I think he can't do this. That's why he went back to f1. But now, of course, this is a terrible threat. So he goes back to a7 to prevent that. So knight g6, king g7. Well, knight f4, king h8. Well, hard to tell really. I have no idea here. If anyone has an engine or someone has checked the game already, I have no idea if white is winning or if it's okay. But I find it hard to believe that white decides the game within 3 moves here. Rook f8, queen f4, yeah, big threat. Rook h7, queen e5, well, maybe he's winning already. But here, there are big threats, of course. Maybe he still has something to defend. In any case, what he did here. Yeah, Omkar, thank you for your lines. You were watching the full broadcast, great, with Judith and Lawrence, I guess. Well, of course it's dangerous. I mean, when you defend such a position as black, it's so difficult. There are threats everywhere, but there are also hidden threats, which you find it very hard to see. I mean, in a way it's easier to play with white, but of course, he's an exchange down. There is this huge pawn on d2, so one mistake by white and he loses as well. Well, here, in any case, Omkar Chakradeo says that rook g7 seems to be 0-0-0. Which is sensible. I mean, the engines, they are just merciless in these positions. They just show you it's equal. Well, don't really, it's very tough to trust this 0-0-0. I understand that the game is probably likely to end in a draw, but the 0-0-0, this is tough. In any case, queen c7, natural, but overlooks a very nice mate here. Knight e8, check. If he takes the queen, rook takes f8 is mate in 2. Bishop g8, rook takes g8, and if he plays king g8 here, of course he loses the queen. but there is probably stronger because the d pawn can also queen. So I think here there must be queen takes e6 or bishop takes e6, and this must be well, if not mate, then linked to big material losses. In any case, so Kramnik bouncing back. Well, I'm happy for him, even though, you know, his behavior was not always perfect in these press conferences, and he seems to be very arrogant sometimes, but still, hats off. I mean, he goes for it, even though, you know, I can imagine myself missing games, losing so many, and then I just want to finish the tournament, you know, making it quiet and drawing and not losing anymore. But he goes for it, and maybe he even believes that he still has chances. That could be, you know, you never know. Maybe he will bounce back and win a few games. I don't, as I've said, he has to win his last 4 games. This is, you know, barely possible. But with his style there, you know, we never know. And Aronian is last. This is so sad. He has 2.5 points. 2.5? No, 3.5 points, excuse me. I was digging him a little bit too deep. He has 3.5 out of 10. This is terrible. Many people hoped that he would challenge Carlsen later on this year, but this is not going to happen. And once again, the candidate has proved itself to be too tough a tournament, or perhaps too tense a tournament with too much at stake, possibly. So, well, I know Levon is going to fight on in the last 4 games, and he's not going to let go. But he must be hugely disappointed, of course, especially in Berlin, a city where he has lived for several years before going back to Romania. So, looking at your comments, Magnus had similar trick against Vichy in Zurich, knight e8. Oh yeah, thank you, Omkar. Yeah, that was a nice memory when we would comment. And unfortunately, this event in Zurich, the Zurich Chess Challenge, didn't take place this year, and is not going to take place this year. It took, yeah, well, last year it was played in April, and even had the chance to participate in it. As a player, this time not as a commentator. This year, well, they had some financial problems, so they won't be able to do it. Some people are hoping, thinking that it's going to take place next year, so fingers crossed for the Zurich Chess Challenge next year. And yeah, we had Leko as a commentator for some days there. It was really nice. He's a great commentator as well. Well, he did it in German and in English there. It was really nice. Hello Rafa, ¿qué tal? Yeah. The +2, +1. Well, just to explain the +2 score, when we speak about +2, +4, +1, we basically take 50% as an average, which is actually the average of points. It's if someone makes all draws like Dingler here, he's on 0 actually, and +1 is 0. So you make every draw, all games drawn, +1 win. So +1. As if, so if you have won 5 games, lost 4 and made 1 draw, then you have +1. 5 minus 4, +1. If you have -3 like Aronian here, that means he has lost 3 games more than he has won. So that's the -3 thing. I had actually, you know, prepared some things here, and I'm going to take a look at very quickly at a crucial game in this event, where Caruana managed to beat Aronian with black. Actually, if you noticed, I've just published a few videos, so not a live stream this time, but a few videos about some games of this event, and on this YouTube channel, and I'm going to publish many more in the days to come. And this game here between Aronian and Caruana is going to be one of my, you know, special, because of the opening. This is an opening I have played many times as black, and I think, well, you will certainly smile when I say this, but okay, this is the Vienna variation, and here after bishop g5 h6. instead of the normal c5 here. h6 is a move which was, well, not invented, but brought to, you know, fashion by, yes, you got it, Kramnik, of course, something like 2010 or 9 maybe, or 11, or around this period, maybe slightly less than 10 years ago. You know, usually it looks like a patzer move, in fact, because, you know, black doesn't challenge white's pawn center and allows him to take back on c4 without any trouble. But there is this long-term concession by white that he has to give up the bishop pair. And this is exactly what Kramnik has understood, that there was potential for black in this setup. And of course, by playing c5 here, you can challenge white's pawn center. Of course, Aronian knows everything there. Well, not everything, but he knows what is the main line and what has to be played. And he obviously goes for the main challenge here, which is this pawn sacrifice after e5, queen d8, knight e4. If he takes back immediately on d4, I think this is the way, well, it's not really the way women grandmaster Lachno played against me in rapid game in Kapdag some years ago. I think she went for knight b5 and then she took back on d4. But here black is just very happy. He's having two bishops, the position is quite open, and well, strategically black is already perhaps slightly better. I'm not saying that white cannot hold the balance if he or she doesn't play accurately, but it's already very nice to play for black. So the only real challenge here is knight e4, sacrificing this pawn. You're not trying to take it back, because it will provoke exchanges. If you take back with a knight here, for instance, it's very hard to move the queen. You know, you're gonna risk losing the knight, and if you lose if you move the knight first, then of course after the exchange of queens, black is again very happy with two bishops without any concession. So white has to try and go for an attack, and this is exactly what is meant with queen e2 here. And in this position at first, Kramnik and other players tried knight c6, but it turns out to be very dangerous. The knight on c6 is actually quite misplaced, because white's attack is actually very dangerous, and black has to be very, very careful here. I've analyzed this and prepared this whole setup together with Georg Meyer, German grandmaster. He was the one who actually you know, introduced me in a way to this system, and then we both played it many times, finding ideas, finding setups, how black should play in order to try and stop white's attack. And of course, most of the credit goes to Georg, with whom I trained for several years before he went to the US to study. Well, now he's back, but he still studies. And plays chess, of course. He's actually active even now in the European Individual Championship. So basically we understood that the knight here shouldn't go to c6, but mostly it has to be brought to d7 and later to f8 to protect the king. In any case, okay, there are many moves here. You can play knight d7, but Caruana followed in our footsteps, Georg's and mine, by playing bishop e7. And here I'm slightly surprised, because Aronian played rook a d1, and which has been played, of course, but the question is which rook to put where. And if we take a look, we'll take a look at the game, of course, we'll see that after rook a d1, queen c7, black manages to put some pressure against e5 here. This is quite important in order to prevent white from attacking too quickly on the king side, and that's why rook f d1 is actually a better move here. And this is how I had to face rook f d1 in 2 games. The only 2 games, according to the database, which has been played with rook f d1 are with me as black here. Excuse me, just going to drink some water. And the main point of this is that now queen c7 makes no sense, because after rook ac1, well, the queen is definitely misplaced. So I went queen b6, but after knight g3, rook d8, it's getting dangerous. Black is going to be just in time to stop the mate in case of bishop d3, knight d7, queen e4. Here we are with knight f8, but things can happen, you know, knight h5, queen g4, and it's very, very dangerous. Well, I've actually analyzed this, and I'm going to take a look at this game in a separate video. So I'm going to move forward to the critical moments in this game. So rook a1, which I believe to be less accurate, and well, here after bishop d3, knight d7, you can already see some small problems with e5, which is attacked directly. So he tries rook c1, but it doesn't make a really good impression, I believe. Queen a5, and the point, well, now if white defends e5 with knight g3, trying to go queen e4, of course, but there is knight c5 also as an idea. Well, taking on c5 is not really enough, I guess, so he has to try bishop b1, but then there is also d3 here, or perhaps slightly later he can play d3, kind of kill the bishop on b1, and it's hard to imagine that white will be able to develop any dangerous attack soon. So that's why I guess Aronian went for g4, all-out attack, but at first, you know, Caruana defends pretty well. Here he could obviously go to d5. I believe that keeping the queen centralized is probably advisable here, but queen a5 is by no means bad. g5, well, he could play perhaps immediately g6, kind of trying to force g takes h6 immediately, because otherwise I might be tempted to play h5 here, you know, closing lines. So it made sense in a way, but queen d8 is also a good defensive move. So if he takes, well, black's idea always to block here, g6, queen g4, he can play king h8, knight g5, bishop d7. It's very messy. I mean, this g4 idea by Aronian is a wild thing, and it's really an interesting way to try and develop his attack. Oh, Mark Crum, you've already watched my videos, 2 of them. There are 3, so don't hesitate to take a look at the third one. And of course, if you like them, don't hesitate either to like these videos. You can also put comments down the videos that I'm gonna, of course, take a look at them and answer them if you have any questions. Nicholas, I'm new to the world of chess, and I was wondering if chess is becoming more and more popular recently, or the reverse. Well, it's becoming popular. It's always been kind of popular in a certain way. You know, just interrupting this game for a minute. Chess used to be, let's say, it's probably more popular now than ever. But chess players, and well, let's say chess grandmasters, used to be much more respected before computers came to disturb us, let's say. Because now, you know, switch on the computer, you can have great commentary by Judith Polgar, Svidler, or you name them on the internet, but they make mistakes tactically, and by switching on your engine you just say, oh, Svidler just blundered something in his commentary, what a patzer. But come on, it's yeah, earlier basically a grandmaster word was the final word. There is no stronger than grandmasters. While nowadays, grandmaster word is at most instructive, you know, but it can easily be wrong as well, because if tactically flawed, then it's worth nothing in a way, which is not true, but it's easy to believe that. So so the main, you know, the biggest reference in chess nowadays is just the engine, and this is pretty sad. On the other hand, thanks to computers and the internet and other tools, chess is becoming more popular, not just in countries where chess has a tradition, but also in remote places in the world. 20 years ago you had maybe I'm exaggerating, but maybe only 10 grandmasters in South America. Nowadays you have many, maybe hundreds, not hundreds, but 100 maybe, and that's thanks to the internet and the availability of material, books and courses. You can also train online via Skype and so on. You don't need to go to your chess club anymore. So this diversion, just to say that yeah, thank you, Mark. just let me check, because I have answered Nicholas, but I can see that many more questions are popping up. The reputation of nerdy chess players remains. Okay, thank you, Mark. Can we call Vienna a classical opening against d4? It's a hybrid in a way, the Vienna, with this d takes c4, because it has, you know, it reminds us of the accepted Queen's Gambit, which is of course a classical opening. This early d takes c4, but also allows white to play very aggressively. You know, classical is not synonym to quiet. Classical is more a way to say that it's used to be played many years ago, and the Vienna is pretty modern in this sense. I don't think it was played 40 years ago even. So the Vienna is, you know, a hybrid between classical. It's a mixture between yeah, Queen's Gambit accepted, some sort of Nimzo, Queen's Gambit. It's a very strange opening, and I actually have well, I have done a DVD. It's not out yet. I have prepared a DVD for Chess Base, which is going to be out, well, later this year. I'm not really sure when they are going to publish it, probably after the summer. But it's already done and ready in a way. It's just in two languages, I think. Yeah, English and German. So in case you're interested, I'll let you know when it's out. Really appreciate when GMs don't. Yeah. You're right, Rafa Chess. I think GMs, and this is what I have always done when commentating online, not to use an engine. I mean, when commentating live online, not using an engine, because I think you guys have an engine at home as well, so you can check what the computer says, what lines it says. I think if I have an engine to commentate with, then I'm going to be deflected by its suggestions, evaluations, whereas I believe I'm going to be more useful to you if I just speak what I think of, basically, in terms of ideas, plans, what I see with my eyes, and not what I see, well, with my brain, and not what I see on the screen given by the computer. So I think it's right, but most commentators don't use the engine nowadays, I think. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna, you know, switch back to this game. Aronian goes h4 here. Well, let's see. You see, the computer at first says here f5. I've taken a look at this game with the computer, and says it's f5 with a black advantage. But then you push him a bit, or you push it a little bit, and gf, bishop takes f6, and you start seeing ideas as knight g5. You feed the computer with knight g5, and suddenly, whoops, the evaluation turns around, and it says, well, it's getting dangerous, and so it's already time to stop in a way. It's clear that white has very dangerous attack here. So Caruana really, on his guards, played bishop d7, takes on f6, g6, his main idea, h5, of course, also. Aronian going for h5 is logical, king h8. And now this is an interesting, again, situation. If you compare with what the computer said, the computer just always wants to take on g6. And black takes back, and Caruana would be happy. He has opened the f-file, whereas this exchange here on g6 hasn't really brought white anything concrete yet. It might one day, but it's also very understandable that Aronian wants to wait before opening the f-file for his opponent. So king h2 makes sense. But the king, it's also the white king is not completely safe, because lines can be opened very quickly, and with the two bishops, you know, these like razors against the white king. So well, here bishop c6, very logical. Rook f3, well, I don't know, it's perhaps a bit slow, but he's trying to bring both rooks to g1 and then perhaps h3 or g3. And well, he went bishop d6, queen f2, bishop c7. There's only one problem with the black position at the moment, is this rook doesn't play, the one here on a8. well, that's a consequence of these queen maneuvers with the coming back to d8, but it doesn't play, so it's probably the reason why actually white has enough compensation here. King h3, nice feeling by Aronian. Queen e7, knight g5. Well, here the computer says g takes h5. That's not a move you want to play, but the computer is cool-blooded here and goes for that. And after rook g1, besides other moves, it says simply rook a d8. You remember what I said, this rook doesn't play. Now it's coming. You know, black is not interested in taking the rook here on f3, because the queen might, you know, be brought to e4 then, so that wouldn't, you know, could be too dangerous. In any case, what Caruana plays is very sensible as well. e5, opening diagonals for his bishops. And he, you know, Aronian also goes for the right thing. Rook takes c6, b takes c6, and knight takes f7, check. You know, it's good chess. Takes, pawn takes, and rook f6, and it turns out that white has actually enough compensation. Of course, these two pawns are huge there, and he has some, well, not some, but a lot of play on the white squares. So he went g7 check, king g8, and here in time trouble, Aronian didn't manage to follow through by finding the right move. He played the hasty bishop c4 check. The good move was queen h4. It's not an easy move to find, but at least it makes sense. You're pinning the rook f6 at the moment, as you can see. It's not easy to move it, and well, I've seen queen d6 mentioned in some analysis online. I think it was on Europe site, but they failed to see queen g5. Well, I wouldn't see it. The computer showed it. Queen g5 actually wins for white here, very surprisingly. Rook takes h6 check, king g2, and there is no stopping bishop c4. Strangely enough, white is winning here, or more or less winning. So there are some good moves for black, which are, well, he can give a check first on e6, and after f5, only now play queen d6. There are some differences, of course. Now after queen g5, you can play king h7. The diagonal has been blocked. And king g4, and it's a mess, but it should be okay for white. And also e takes f4 leads to a draw quite easily, actually. Bishop c4 check, and there is perpetual check. It's the best line for both, actually. White would have to find a few good moves after e4 in order to make a draw. Those are h7 check, takes, rook g3, king h8. So far not too complicated, but here you need to see this whole sequence. It's not easy. Rook g8 check, takes, 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 bishop c4, king g7, and there is a magic perpetual check here. Queen g5. You can see again rook g6 still impossible, of course, because the queen is hanging on e7. So he has to go to h7, and now there is this draw. Queen g5, queen g8, nothing to be done. So that would have been a nice way to finish the game for Aronian, actually. He risked quite a lot in this game. He went for it, and he would have been deserved. He would have deserved to make a draw eventually. But after bishop c4, unfortunately for him, it's all over. King h7, queen h4, one move too late, e4, and now no space for h7 check. So rook g3, but it's, you know, and then Caruana, of course, without mercy, going for the best line, and there he resigned, actually. This is a rook h6, rook takes h6 coming. You can't do anything against that. So white loses big material here. And this win allowed Caruana to seize the lead again, with +3. Coming back to this plus. Well, so far he is the most convincing player, I believe. Not just the most convincing player, but also he's willing to go, you know, for a certain level of risk. This opening against Aronian is certainly risky. I can speak about it since I've played it with black, and I know how dangerous it can be. So he's not afraid to consequently take risks, and I think that when he decided to play this opening against Aronian, he certainly had in mind not just to make a draw, but also to create chances for himself in case Aronian would try too much, and this is what happened. I believe Aronian didn't expect this from Caruana, perhaps from Kramnik, but not from Caruana, and in other words, he's going for it. So he's the most courageous player. Okay, Kramnik is another league in terms of taking risks in this tournament. But in Caruana's case, it's certainly more calculated risk. When to try for something, when to risk a little bit. In that sense, I think he's finding a right balance between keeping control, but also going for a certain amount of risky positions where he can actually try to beat his opponent. It's going to be interesting tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. He's going to play against Kramnik with, if I'm not mistaken, he's going to be white. Or no, that's the day after tomorrow. That's going to be round 12 or round 11. Oh, it's probably going to be tomorrow then. Yeah, that's going to be tomorrow. So we are going to witness Caruana Kramnik tomorrow, and that could be actually an interesting moment for Caruana. And if Kramnik is clever, well, he is clever, but I mean in his tournament strategy, he might as well try and play it more, quietly tomorrow, and try and see if Caruana tries to go for it, which would give him chances, and perhaps he's able to bounce back then. Well, it's going to be an interesting game in any case. So who is going to win this candidates tournament after all? We have 4 games left, and well, 3 players mostly we can safely say that who are in contention for first place, and Caruana has the best chances. I think Mamedyarov at some point will have to, if he wants to take first place, he will have to go out a little bit out of his comfort zone if he wants to reach it. Today he tried something, certainly. It didn't really pay off in the end, but he tried for it. He went for it and he tried to win. And the game was quite interesting between the 2 leaders. So he's missed a chance to, overtake the leader Caruana. So for Mamedyarov, there are still some occasions to come back, but he has played against Ronian already. He will have to play against Kramnik, Wesley. So he still has some chances, of course. But well, Caruana is the favorite, and that would actually be a nice final, I believe. Caruana against Carlsen. Carlsen would be the favorite. He is ahead in their head-to-head encounters quite clearly. Even in the last few games, even I think he's even taken a psychological advantage. But it would be something interesting. I believe it would be more interesting than Mamedyarov against Carlsen. Mamedyarov has a terrible score against Carlsen, but perhaps because he always decided, he was always true to his former style, to go for risks. If now he calms down, it could become interesting. But in most of the chess fields, be it quiet games, tactics, end games, I think Carlsen is superior to Mamedyarov. Perhaps only when Mamedyarov has the initiative. He can be dangerous, more dangerous maybe than Carlsen even. But Carlsen somehow has always managed to get positions where Mamedyarov's initiative against himself was not, strong enough, was not important enough, so he would just always refute him. And Grishuk against Carlsen, would be interesting, but I also think that Carlsen would be the favorite. I'm no genius by saying that Carlsen would be the favorite in most these matches in a way, but I think against Caruana it would be quite interesting. Caruana certainly has the guts to take on Carlsen and not to be afraid of him, maybe. And he's well surrounded. Kazimjanov is a great second, of course, for such matches, because it's not just about knowing things and being well prepared. It's also about devising strategies beforehand. You know, Kasimdzhanov was Anand's second when Anand defeated Kramnik in 2008 in Bonn in the match, and Kasimdzhanov was the one who suggested this very clever line of the Meran Semislav, which took Kramnik completely by surprise and yielded Anand 2 wins with black. So Omkar, you're saying that Bu Xianxue is actually the Chinese guy. He's the only Magnus killer around. Yeah, he beat him in the World Cup. He also beat him in the Rapid World Championship in round 1 in Riyadh at the end of last year. So we'll see. In a week we'll be there and we'll know. So I hope you will be there as well. I hope that you enjoyed this broadcast very much. If this is the case, please like the video, and of course for those who watch it later on as a video, not live, you are highly welcome to leave comments down below there in the commentary section. I'll take a look at them, answer questions and so on, or comment on your comments. So well, thank you for your attention. I'll see you next week. Bye bye.